All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I think we are already past by 5 minutes. So today we will begin with taking a look at the various message types. So from yesterday's session, we have understood that HL7 messaging has many message types. Each message type is nothing but the name of the message, which will let us know what kind of event it is and what kind of data is going to be transacted in that specific event. For example, if you talk about an ADTA04 message, it is a message related to demographic data, which is being sent from one system to another. And it generated, or basically it generates as part of an event called patient registration. Similarly, there are other events like appointment scheduling, appointment cancellation, or order placing by the doctor. So entire hospital's workflow is divided into various chunks of events, and each of these events will trigger a message. Each event will trigger one HL7 message. So those are called as trigger events, and we looked at few of them yesterday. Today we will continue taking a look at the message types in detail. So being an HL7 analyst, you need to be aware of most commonly used message types and what is the structure of those message types. And also need to memorize few of the fields which are part of these structures. Okay, so as part of that journey, we will take a look at most frequently used 6 to 7 message types during our next 5, 6 sessions. And we will talk about the structure. We'll talk about what are the important fields that we have in each of those segments. We'll also relate it back to real functional scenarios. Um, so will explore each of these fields. Wherever an explanation is necessary or workflow related aspects are necessary, I will go ahead and cover that. Okay, so any questions from yesterday's session? Anyone has anything to ask before we begin?
Yes,
Hi.
this is Yvette. I wanted to ask that do we I did not see the video or the recorded session for the class on Monday and Tuesday.
Hmm. Yeah, Srinivas will create a Google Drive and he will also create a WhatsApp group and he will share it with you all maybe after today.
Thank you.
No worries. Yeah, someone else also had a question. Was it Javier?
Yeah, the same, but you already answered. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started. So first we'll begin with the first message type, which is ADTA04. Basically, A04 is an event type which is used for patient registration. So whenever a patient gets registered, that information has to be sent over from PM to EHR. So the message type that will be used is ADTA04. And every message has its own structure. This structure is laid down by HL7 organization. Whatever you are seeing here as the structure is a generic structure. It's not the standard structure released by HL7. If you look at the actual HL7 message structure for ADTA04, there will be many more segments apart from what you're seeing here. But what we are going to see is very generic structure that we use in industry. HL7 releases a very common structure that can be used by anyone. Basically, what people do is they will grab that and they will create their own structure and will have only fewer segments because all segments are not necessary. So from my experience, I have gathered this information or I have laid down these segments, which are commonly seen in ADT messages. So every HL7 message will have segments, right? So an ADTA04 message will have these segments basically. So MSH stands for message segment header. We will have an EVN segment, which is an event segment. Then we will have patient identification segment. And then we have patient visit, PV1 segment, GT1 segment, and IN1 segment. Each of these segments will carry specific type of information. As the name itself suggests, we will be able to figure out what kind of information is transacted in that specific field or specific segment. So if you talk about insurance segment, it will have all the information related to the insurance of the patient, right? In a similar way, if you talk about PID, yesterday we have seen that PID is patient identification segment. Okay, so we are going to explore each one of these segments and understand what are the important fields of each one of these, and uh, see what kind of data is transacted in each one of these segments. Now, keep in mind that this is not the final structure. What I have lined out here is basically the generic structure that you will see in real-time HL7 interfaces. Few may have only 3 segments like MSH, EVN, and PID. They may omit usage of PV1, GT1, and IN1. Or few implementations might have MSH, EVN, PID, and IN1. They may omit GT1 or PV1. So there are multiple combinations that are possible. But in most of the cases, these are the common segments that we will see in an ADT message. So let's go ahead and get started with each of these segments. First segment is message header segment, message segment header. So it is a segment which will have some header related information. So you can compare this segment to index in a textbook or index in any book or contents page in any book. What would that tell us? That will have a series of chapters or series of units, and it will give us a high level overview of what that chapter consists of, right? Similarly, an MSH message or MSH segment is basically uh, it's going to tell you some information related to the message. So it will tell you who is sending the message, which application is sending the message from which location. It will also tell you who is going to receive the message and what is the application that is going to receive the message. It will also talk about when the message got generated, what is the name of that message, which is nothing but the message type. So in that way, there are some header related information that will be transacted across in a message segment. Okay, so the way we are going to look at each of these segments is to see the tabular format. So every segment has its own tabular structure, and each row represents that field. And the field numbers are specified in the sequence here. So message 1, 2, 3, 4, all of these are individual fields. Okay, let's look at one simple quick HL7 message. So the other day we were taking a look at this PID segment, right? And we were talking about segment number one, field number 1, field number 2, field number 3, right? In the same way, even whatever we are seeing here, for example, a message 3, this is a message 3, this is a message 4, this is a message 5, 6, and so on. So we are going to see all the important fields that we need to be aware of as part of each one of the segment structure. So let's begin with a message and first understand this table. So first column will represent the sequence number or position, field position. Second column represent the property of length. So each of these fields have certain properties. So those properties are present in this row. So length will tell whether a certain field is limited to a certain number of characters or not. For example, MSH10 is a field where 199 characters are the character limit. So it cannot cross beyond 199. You can have maximum of 199 characters. Then what does 0 represent? 0 represent that there is no limitation. It doesn't mean that we cannot have any um, field, cannot have any uh, characters. It represents that you can have as many number of characters as you want. There is no limitation. Then you have data types. So each field has its own data type. So data type is a vast topic. We will go ahead and talk about data types in 2 sessions separately when we actually reach there after completing the HL7 message structures. But for now, what you need to remember is each field will have data type associated with it. And these data types are predefined and already set by HL7 organization. So if you have any programmers here, who do a little bit of coding, we know that while creating a variable, we assign a data type. So it is the developer's flexibility to assign a data type. But in terms of HL7, we don't define or set any data type. We just follow what is provided to us by the HL7 organization, right? So all the data types are predefined, and each of these data types have specific meanings. So we will go ahead and look at the most commonly used data types down the line in future sessions. Next, you have optionality defined for each of these fields. What does this represent? It will tell you whether a certain field is required or optional. So in a field, in a segment, there are many fields, right? In those fields, yesterday we saw that there are few blanks. So if you look at this PID segment, there is a blank here, there is a blank here, there is a blank here, right? So each one of these fields are actually going to are actually blank and doesn't have the data. But HL7 says that there are few fields where you are supposed to have the data. And that field is a required field. You cannot have it as blank. Okay, such fields are represented here with the field uh, with a designation called as R. Okay, so this designation will help us to go ahead and understand uh, whether a field is required or optional. Alongside required and optional, there are other designations as well. So let us take a look at that. Number one is so we know that R is required. O is optional, which means you have the choice of omitting that field or leaving that field as blank. You may also see something called as B, which is backward compatible. You may also see C, which is conditionally required. And then you may also see W, which is withdrawn. Okay. So what do they indicate? R required indicates, R requires, says that it's required, and O says that it is optional. Backward compatibility is a scenario where you have a field designated as a backward compatible field for if HL7 has decided that we are not going to use that field anymore. So if you look at this PID segment, here you have PID2 and PID4 as W, which is withdrawn. And if you see PID13, it is backward compatible, right? So what does that backward compatible mean? Let's talk about that. Let's say HL7 has decided that they will retire a field, which means they don't want to use that field anymore and they are going to withdraw it. Okay. So let's take the example of PID13 itself. PID13 is basically a phone number field. Okay. And they have decided that we want to withdraw it. Withdraw this and use a different field. So when they want to use a different field, what they do first is, and this is version 2.5, for example. So when they were at 2.5, they have decided that in the future versions, we don't want to go ahead and have any more usage of PID13. Okay, we are going to retire that field or mark that field as withdrawn. So what they do in 2.5.1, they represent PID13 as backward compatible. In 2.6, they represent PID13 as backward compatible. In 2.7, they represent the PID13 field in the specification document as withdrawn. So before withdrawing a certain field, HL7 says that there will be two intermittent versions where the field will be displayed as backward compatible. So if you are using these versions, you can still use PID13 for your phone number. But if you're using version 2.7, you are not supposed to use PID13 because that's a withdrawn field. Okay, so before withdrawing any field or before withdrawing the usage of any field, HL7 will mark that field as backward compatible for at least two versions. So that's where you will see backward compatible. And later, once it is completely withdrawn, you will see it as a withdrawn field. Okay. So if a field is withdrawn, it may be used somewhere else, or it may be concatenated into another repetition related segment or field. Sorry, repetition related field, or there will definitely be an alternate choice for that to mark it as before marking that as withdrawn. Okay. Yeah, Xavier, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, Dixon. That means that, let's say, in version 2.7 or 2.71, it won't exist, that field won't exist anymore.
Field will be there, but you are not supposed to use it because we cannot go ahead and skip the number. So in the HL7 message, field will still be existing, but its usage, you cannot go ahead and use or consider using PID 13 for your exchange of phone number.
So we left it blank.
Sorry, we
left it blank in the
correct.
next.
We leave it blank. Exactly. Exactly. We leave it blank.
Thank you.
Okay. So just to give another idea, in PID, basically PID 40 is used for phone number from version 2.7. Okay, so they have withdrawn this. They have added PID 40 at the end, and they started using PID 40 for phone number.
Oh,
Yep.
great, thank you.
Yep, no problem. Yeah, Bala, go ahead.
So this like when we have a 2.6, right? I know now saturated, we are not going beyond 2.8, right? So
Right.
it's not good.
Mm-hmm.
But back then when it was 2.6 and they go to 2.6.1 or something like that, does that change for whoever implemented already, or this is just when they are going to adopt to a new implementation, they would change it? What if somebody have implemented already on 2.6 and in 2.7 it's withdrawn? What would happen to that?
So if they have already implemented 2.6, they are using 2.6, right? And if they are moving or migrating from 2.6 to 2.7, they have to adhere to the specifications of 2.7.
Okay.
But if they have implemented 2.6, in 2.6, it's a legible use. So you are using it, that is fine. But by specification, by telling you that it is retained for backward compatibility, is a green signal or a red signal for us, stating that in future versions, this field will be gone.
Okay. So in that case, every other partners, right? Let's say we have multiple applications. All has to be on the same version, right? Is that something?
Not necessary. Not necessary. That's where integration engine comes into play to bridge that gap between two different versions of HL7. Let's say that you are exporting 2.3, but the vendor says that they need 2.5. So so you will do a gap analysis and perform a mapping between 2.3 and 2.5, and then you generate your message as per the requirements of 2.5 and then send it to the vendor.
Okay, got it. So we do just remap from
Correct.
one to the other, and while we are sending back, also we will do a reverse mapping to send them back.
Absolutely.
Okay, got it.
Absolutely. That's the role of the integration engine. One of the major roles of the integration engine is to handle these kind of mismatches or differences in the versions.
Thanks, Dixon. Got it.
No problem. All right. Any other questions from anyone? Okay, great.
So
Yeah.
sorry, I have,
Yeah,
so
Jitendra,
like, is there any translation table that we have to update, like, 2.3 to 2.5, or like we have to modify every message, or, just curious, at this stage, because I don't know, how these things work.
Translation table is not, so it depends on the integration engine again. For example, if you talk about integration engine like Rhapsody, they do provide mapper documents, which can do that functionality for you, where you can go ahead and have a table and perform the mappings on the fly. But with integration engines like Mirth Connect, you have to build everything from scratch. Okay, you can do a drag and drop mapping same the way you do in Rhapsody, but it is a little bit more raw in Mirth Connect. than what you have in Rhapsody. So it purely depends. There is no predefined thing that this will be mapped to this field. You have to do that gap analysis. Or if someone has placed something out there in Google who has done that gap analysis and said that 2.3 maps to this particular field of 2.5, you can go ahead and grab that.
Okay, okay.
Okay, even if you grab the sheet, that is only for the reference. The programming aspect while building your interface, you have to anyways do it from scratch.
Mm. And Dixon, what is the most common interface that the industry is using? Like, is it the Mirth or is it like the Rhapsody or no?
This is a question where you say that which kind of paste would you use, Close-Up or Colgate or Pepsodent?
No,
So
just curious, just
yeah,
because
yeah,
of
I
the
understand.
sale of,
I'm just kidding.
yeah.
So it depends on the preferences by the industry. So I will say top 5 integration engines. There are many in the market, literally, but most frequently used are Cloverleaf, CorePoint, Rhapsody, Mirth, and Ensemble. There are other integration engines like you have Microsoft's BizTalk. You have an integration tool from IBM. You have also have integration tools from uh, something called as Cuvera, which is again an integration engine like Mirth. And you also have integration engine called Integration Buddy, GE Connector. So there are many, but these 5 stand out, and you hear them a lot. Cloverleaf, CorePoint, Mirth Connect, Rhapsody, and Ensemble. Okay, and each one of them have their own edge. Every product out there will have its own advantages and disadvantages. Mirth stands out even more because it is open source and freeware. All the other integration engines that I mentioned just now are payable. You won't even get a free trial to use any one of these engines. Um, Few of them you may have, like Cuvera, you can install for 30 days and try and test it. Ensemble, I'm not very sure. But Merge stands out because it is freeware and it is robust too. Few people worry that it is freeware, it is open source. We may not sure how good it works. I have worked for many enterprise clients, and enterprise clients, when I say enterprise, daily message transaction would be 1 million. Okay, and still Mirth handles all of that. So it is such robust application. Uh, so there are various of these applications. So you can learn any one of them. If you learn one of them, then it is not a tough deal to learn other integration engines as well, because the concepts remain same, like transformation, building mappings, and all of these remain same. It's just that how you know, or how you learn about how things are done in other application, which will take 1 or 2 months. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Dixon.
Yep,
Yeah.
no problem.
Yeah, just I was curious to know.
Yep, no worries, no worries. Yeah, I get that question a lot of times. I was just kidding. Yeah, Bala, you had a question?
Yes. So
Yeah.
one question is that, so if a vendor is, if say a third party is using a 2.5, right?
Mhm.
And can they change to 2.6 after a year, right? If your mapping is with the Mirth Connect. So they have to notify us, or how we will know when the vendor is changing from one version to another?
Yes, if they change on their end, they will definitely let us know in case if there are significant changes, uh, which would impact the interface.
Okay. So they
If
will just
right,
all this.
correct.
Okay.
So we will always have backward compatibility in terms of when someone is moving to a higher version. So there are few rules from HL7 control perspective, which would say that in case if vendor is sending additional data, you shouldn't ignore it. You can still process that. So those kinds of rules will ensure that you are still processing the data. The receiver is still processing the data. But in case if there are significant changes that will break the interface, they have to work out with the sender and get it corrected, or they have to manage it internally within their system.
Okay. And when was the last significant version change? And since you're in the space,
Mm-hmm.
do you see that there will be a next version coming, or that's, I mean, after that, is going to be a final?
2.8.1 is the last that we had. So I don't see any significant releases after that. Because most of the requirements are almost satisfied with the versions that we have right now. I'm not very sure whether we'll have an upgraded version, but 2.8.1 is the last that we have seen.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, Dixon. I have a
Hey,
question.
yeah, go ahead. Sorry, 2.8.2, not 2.8.1. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah,
Hi,
go ahead.
Dixon. I have a question.
Go ahead.
So, how do you know what version of HL7 the vendor is using? How do you know when you get a message?
Yeah, we'll get there, but just to show you in the HL7 message itself, you will be able to see which version of HL7 message is being transacted to you.
Okay. Okay. All
Okay,
right.
MSH11, MSH12 is the field which will tell you what kind of version is being transacted.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay, here for this message, it is version 2.3. You may have
2.3.
right, correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Okay, let's proceed. So some good questions out there. So that's what optionality is all about. I think I missed one more. So one more we have is conditionally required. So conditionally required is a functional based field. For example, patient is collecting the sample, then sample volume is a field which will be there in the segment. And that field will have C as the designation. So what does it indicate? If it has C, it indicates that if sample is being collected, then the value has to be there. So there is a condition. So wherever you have this aspect of condition, or wherever there is a possibility of some sort of condition, then you will see this field designated as C. Okay. So now, so that is about optionality. Next, we have repetition. Certain fields can be repeated. When I say repeated, it means that it can have more than one data element of the same kind. For example, if you talk about phone numbers, nowadays there is no one who doesn't have more than one phone number, right? Most of the people will have at least two numbers with them. Now, PID 13 is dedicated for sending the phone numbers. But what if we have more than one phone number? We have two phone numbers. So that's where a repetition number will come into play. Repetition will tell you whether the same data element can repeat or not. Okay. So if it says that it is, if it designates itself to be star, then it means a repeating field. For example, if you go to PID 13, here you have a star, which means you can have multiple phone numbers being sent in PID 13. If it says one, then you are not supposed to repeat that data element anymore within that field. Okay, we'll look at the examples down the line, but just to let you know that repetition will tell us whether that field can repeat or not. If it can repeat, how it repeats, it depends on the structure, usage of a delimiter, which we'll talk about down the line once we see the structure of the message. Next, you have table. Table represents that few of the fields are associated with a table, meaning there will be hundreds of possible values that you can have for a certain field. And if and you can use one of those values. So if we have such kind of scenario where you have to get the value from one of the tables, then those tables are represented with a table number here in the table field. Okay, we will look at examples for these as well as and when we progress in PID segment. Next, you have name. Name is nothing but the name of the field, which will tell you what kind of data is going to be transacted in a certain field. So this will be the format. All the tables will be in the very same format. So we'll be going through each of the segments, looking at the table itself. So yesterday, someone was asking me what all fields we have to learn. So it is very hard to learn everything, right? So I have highlighted the commonly used fields or the fields that usually tend to be discussed when you are on call or when you are implementing an interface. So I have highlighted them based on the experience that I have. So all that you need to understand and know is these important fields. Okay. And there are few fields that you need to memorize. So we will be looking at around 15-20 segments during the entire course. But out of them, 7 to 8 segments are very, very important that you must learn, you must memorize, you must by heart. So I'll tell you about those segments at the end of the HL7 training completion so that you can learn them. But for now, these green highlights are the ones that we are going to uh, get in detail and understand what that field is designated for, what kind of data we are going to transact in that field. And if there are any exceptions or any workflow related aspect associated with that field, we will talk about that. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started with MSH segment. Now that we know this table structure, we will go ahead and take a look at that, each one of these fields. So yesterday I told you that whatever is held between two pipes is called as a field, right? So this is one field, this is one field, this is another field, and each of these fields have field numbers. So this is field number 1, field number 2, field number 3, field number 4, field number 5, and so on, right? There is one exception though, only one exception. In case of MSH segment, the pipe itself is called as field number 1, only and only in MSH1. Okay, not everywhere. Keep in mind, only in MSH1, the pipe itself is called as field number 1. For rest of the fields, rest of the segments, whatever is held between two pipes is called as a field. So this is field number 1, and these are field number 2. And then this is field number 3, field number 4, field number 5, and so on. So rest is everything, rest of everything is same again. So there is no difference in how you read the segment. Only with MSH 1 and 2, you have this exception. So 1 is pipe itself. That's what we are seeing here in the message, in the table. So it says that MSH 1, it is a field separator, the pipe itself, which we are using. MSH 2 is control character. So
It's one question.
yeah.
Field separator will be a different one other than pipe because it says a field separator one, right? Can we give an asterisk or something like that? Or is it always a pipe? Or is it just a standard?
HL7 standard says pipe. If you want to use a different value, you can go ahead and change it and use it. Let's say, for example, if you want to use star or asterisk that I said, that you said, you can go ahead and use it. But you will be deviated from the standard. HL7 gives you the flexibility to replace any one of these characters. It's not necessary that you have to use only these. HL7 designated these and told that cap is for component separation, pipe is for field separation, and so on. But you will be standing out from the rest of the implementations, and your implementation will become a customized implementation because you are using a different character for a field separation. So that will attract more of coding, more of understanding, not understanding, but more of coding or changing how you interpret an HL7 message.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense.
But you can change if you want to.
Okay.
All right, next we have MSH2, which is encoding characters or control characters or message delimiters. These are the names that we have for MSH2, which is nothing but it will tell you what are the grammatical syntaxes of reading or writing an HL7 message. So it will line down all the important characters that we have seen the other day in our PPT. Next we have MSH3. MSH3 represents sending application. So MSH 3, 4, 5, 6 are very, very important fields. Though they are marked as optional, which means they are not required, you can leave it blank. But most of the people use these 4 fields to tell who is sending the message and who is receiving the message. So by looking at MSH 3, 4, 5, 6, you will be able to determine and tell who is the sender and who is the receiver, right? So message 3 and 4 are dedicated for sending side of data, and message 5 and 6 are dedicated for receiving side of the things. All right. So 3 is basically sending application, which will tell you which application is sending the information, whether it is PM application or whether it is EHR application or whether it is lab application. And message 4 will tell you which facility or which location is actually sending that information. Okay. Similarly, you have message 5, which is used for receiving application. So that will tell you which application is going to receive the data. And then you have message 6, which will tell you um, which is the facility that is going to receive the data. All right. And then you have message 7, which is going to have a date and time of the transaction. So that will, by looking at message 7, we can always determine when exactly the message got generated. So if you see this message got generated in 1999, December 27th at 2:08 a.m. Sorry, 2:08 p.m. Right? So that way you can always determine what is the date and time when the message got generated. Next, you have message 9. Message 9 is message type. So we have talked about this yesterday. Message 9 is going to tell you what kind of message you are actually looking at or actually working with. And then you have message 10, which is message control ID. So message control ID is nothing but the unique ID that is used to identify one single HL7 message throughout the interface. So you will be transacting hundreds and thousands of messages every day through an interface, right? So it is very important to determine what can or to identify a single message uniquely when you are transacting so many messages. So a message 10 is the one which will have that unique ID, and this is called as message control ID, and this will help us to go ahead and set up, or it will help us to go ahead and identify or pull out one single HL7 message from hundreds and thousands of transactions that you have. Okay. And then you have MSH11, which is nothing but processing ID. So processing ID will tell you whether the HL7 message is a test message or a development message or a production message. So in MSH11, so this is the MSH10, which is message control ID. This is MSH11, which is processing ID. So when we talk about processing ID, what all values you can send? So in MSH11, you can send either P, which represents production, then you have T, which represents testing, then you have D, which represents development. All right. So any one of these three can be used. So if you are working, or if the interfaces are being tested, then we would generally use T or D. And in production, we explicitly use P. And if we receive T or D into production, then we usually go ahead and not encourage to transact that message. We'll basically go ahead and fail that message in the system. Okay, or filter that message in the system. So that's where we will usually go with whenever you have anything other than P in production. Okay. So next we have, why is my mouse not responding? Yeah, okay. All right, next we have MSH12, which is nothing but the version ID. So that will help us to go ahead and determine which version of HL7 you are dealing with. So by looking at that, we'll be able to say and take a call whether we have to perform some transformations or if we have to do anything on version side. Okay.
Dixon,
And then, hey, Jitendra, yeah.
sorry, sorry to cut you, So this message control ID, like,
Mm,
is this the unique ID, like, for that transaction that will be, suppose if a patient registration is done, A04, so
mhm.
that control ID will be the same,
No, it will be unique for every transaction, every message.
okay.
Okay, you might be transacting hundreds of A04 messages for that day. So this will be unique. Usually what people do is they use date and time itself to the precision of milliseconds so that it will be unique.
Okay.
Okay,
But
so if you are
sorry,
using seconds, milliseconds, and prefix it or suffix it with something, it will become unique for every message.
Mhm. I do see while troubleshooting the people now, sometimes they ask about the what is the message control ID,
Right, because
Yeah.
that will help you to uniquely track down that message out of the hundreds of transactions that you have.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
one question to add to that.
Yeah,
So
Bala.
this is control ID. Is that a sender, whoever is sending this message, they will set this message control ID?
Yes, correct.
When we interact with multiple vendors, and there's a possibility that we may have a same message control ID as well, right? Unless they have a prefixes of their application name or something like that.
Right. Usually possibility is there, but if you are, possibilities between two different interfaces having the same message control ID, yes, you may have.
Okay, got it. But with just based on the interface, we can identify this
Right.
specific.
Correct. Let's say that you are receiving messages from multiple vendors. It is possible that if they are using date and time, if another vendor is also using date and time, you may receive two different messages. But again, by looking at a message 3, 4, 5, 6, you will be able to determine who is the sender and then take a call accordingly to track down that message.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep, no problem. Barry, you had a question? Okay, all right. So, yeah, next what we have is MSH 15 and 16. So MSH 15 and 16 are the fields used for acknowledgements. So what is an acknowledgement? An acknowledgement is a confirmation sent by the receiver indicating that, yes, I have received your message. For example, if you are going to any shopping center, we pay the bill and then we get a receipt, right? That receipt will act as proof of purchase that you have paid the amount and you did in fact generate the invoice, right? So in the same way, whenever a message is getting transacted between two different systems, let's say PM to EHR, how will PM get to know that message has been sent to the EHR successfully? So that's where acknowledgement comes into play. Once EHR receives the message, EHR will go ahead and send out an acknowledgement back to the PM system. Okay, and PM system will get that acknowledgement and it will confirm that yes, the message has been received by the destination successfully. Okay, there are two different types of acknowledgements. One is accept acknowledgement and the other one is application level acknowledgement. So we will take a deeper dive into acknowledgements in when we talk about acknowledgement message types. But just we'll just see why these two fields are used here today. But understanding what is accept acknowledgement, what is application acknowledgement is something that we will see in the future sessions. So by sending some value in MSH 15 and 16, the sending system is dictating the destination system on when they need the acknowledgement. Okay. So if you are sending a value in MSH 15 saying that I always need acknowledgement, for example, then you are telling the destination system that for every message that I am sending you, please send me an acknowledgement. Okay. Or if in MSH 15, if I am saying that send me an acknowledgement only if there is error, then the sending system is telling the receiving system that send me an acknowledgement only when the message errors out on your side. Which means for all the successful transactions, don't send me an acknowledgement. If a transaction fails on your side, send me an acknowledgement. So that way, message 15, 16 values are used to used by the sender to tell the destination system when they need an acknowledgement. What all values can be used? Those are part of the table 155, which we will see tomorrow. Okay, so there are six different values that you can send. We will understand each one of them and see what all each one of those will represent, and understand a little bit about the workflow aspects of message 15 and 16. Okay, so I'll open up for questions. Any questions from anyone?
I do see that most of the implementation, they stop at MSH12.
Right.
Once the version ID is complete, the message
Right.
is complete. Yeah. So
Right.
I never saw this 15 and 16.
Yep. 15 and 16. Again, 15 and 16 are used only if the sender wants to explicitly tell the destination system. If not, they may omit it.
Dixon, this is like a message, right? They are saying what type of acknowledgement they need, or or when the receiver receives a message, they will have a different message to acknowledge, or how they do, because
Now,
this
is telling the destination system when they need the acknowledgement.
Okay, but this is not a acknowledgement, something
No,
like this.
no. This is not the acknowledgement message. This is just telling that in what event they need an acknowledgement.
Okay, got it.
Whether they need it always, or on failures, or on successful only, such kind of things.
Yeah.
We'll see those values tomorrow.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions from anyone? Okay, great. I am not hearing anything. So let us conclude today's session here. We'll continue in tomorrow's session. We'll take a look at message 15, 16, and then also proceed with further segments, EVN, PID, and we will take a look at the example message as well as and when we progress with each one of these fields. Okay.
Dixon, regarding this MSH11 processing ID, can you?
Yeah, processing ID will tell you whether a message is a production message, testing message, or development message.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, so you may receive any one of these fields depending on your interface that you're testing or actually using it in production.
Okay. Thank you. Got it.
Yep, no problem. All right, so we'll conclude today's session here. Thanks, everyone. So with today, I think free demo sessions are done. And from tomorrow, if you would like to continue, please enroll in the training. Reach out to Srinivas for any questions you have. You can reach out to the number that is pasted in the chat. You can WhatsApp or call him directly and talk to him. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you, everyone. You all have a very good day. We'll catch up tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dixon. Have a
Bye-bye.
nice day.
Yep, you too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Dixon.